At a party, my girlfriend introduced me as her roommate who pays half the bills. She thought it was funny. I didn't argue. 2 weeks later, her landlord called. Guess who'd moved out overnight? The moment the switch flipped, it made no sound. It was a Saturday night, and we were at a party hosted by one of my girlfriend Qley's influencer friends. The apartment was packed with people who all seemed to talk in brand deals and curated photo opportunities. I was standing by the drink table when Qley grabbed my arm, dragging me over to a small group. Her best friend, Jessica, was holding court, a glass of champagne in one hand and her phone in the other. And this, Qley announced with a grand sweeping gesture toward me, is Alex. He's my amazing roommate who pays half the bills. The group laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh, more of a dismissive, patronizing chuckle. Jessica gave me a pitying smile, the kind you'd give a golden retriever who just learned to sit. "Oh, Qley, you're terrible," she chirped, before turning back to her conversation, my existence already forgotten. I smiled, a tight, polite smile I had perfected over the last year. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I didn't point out that my half of the bills was the entire $1,500 rent on her 2-bedroom apartment, all the utilities and the weekly grocery deliveries, while her half consisted of the Netflix subscription and the occasional scented candle. In that moment, surrounded by the noise and laughter, I simply nodded and made a mental note. It was the final data point I needed. The project was officially a failure, and it was time to implement the exit protocol. Let me back up. I'm not a simp. I'm a systems analyst. My entire life revolves around logic, patterns, and efficient solutions. When I met Qley 2 years ago, I was fascinated by her. She was charismatic, ambitious, and lived in a world so different from my own structured reality. She was trying to build a career as a lifestyle influencer, and I saw it as a project, a startup. I was willing to be a venture capitalist of sorts. When her roommate moved out a year ago, she was in a panic. She couldn't afford the apartment on her own. I saw a logical solution. I made significantly more money than her. I could move in, cover the major expenses to give her the stability to grow her brand, and we could build a future together. It was an investment. I laid out the terms clearly. I would handle the core finances, she would manage the household, and we would reassess in 1 year to see if her venture was becoming profitable and our partnership was working. My name was never on the lease. She was the sole leaseholder. I was just a permitted occupant who set up a direct payment from my bank account to the landlord for the full rent each month. It was a clean, efficient arrangement, but over the past year, the data started trending negative. Her brand consisted of taking pictures of expensive brunches I paid for and clothes she bought with a credit card I co-signed for. The household management was her leaving dishes in the sink and complaining that I bought the wrong brand of almond milk. The partnership was her and her friends, led by the endlessly annoying Jessica, making subtle jokes at my expense. They saw me as a quiet, boring utility, the reliable background process that kept their flashy user interface running smoothly. They never understood that the quiet guy who analyzes systems for a living is the one who sees every flaw, every inefficiency, and every vulnerability. The roommate comment wasn't an isolated incident. It was the confirmation of a pattern. She didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a resource to be exploited. A wallet with legs. And in my world, when a system is fundamentally broken and inefficient, you don't keep trying to patch it. You decommission it and build something better. So I smiled, took a sip of my drink, and began planning her decommissioning. Update 1. The 2 weeks following that party were, on the surface, completely normal. I was pleasant, I was helpful, I played the part of the supportive boyfriend. Inside, I was a machine executing a complex plan. Phase 1 was acquisition. I spent my lunch breaks for 3 days viewing apartments. I found a perfect 1-bedroom condo in a new building downtown. It was clean, modern, and minimalist. Everything Qley's cluttered, performative apartment was not. I signed the lease, paid the deposit, and set a move-in date for 2 weeks from the day of the party. Phase 2 was logistics. Qley and Jessica had been planning a spa and shopping weekend trip for the exact weekend I needed. It was perfect. They'd be gone from Friday afternoon until Sunday night. I scheduled a moving company, the best and most expensive one I could find, for that Saturday. I specified a 4-man crew and told them the job was a full pack and move. I wanted my extraction to be swift and traceless. I spent the evenings that week subtly preparing. I went through every room, every closet, every drawer, and mentally tagged my possessions. I used a simple app on my phone to photograph and catalog everything that was mine, from my clothes and books to my kitchen equipment and the high-end computer setup in my office. This wasn't just about getting my stuff. It was about creating a perfect record, leaving no room for her to later claim I had taken something of hers. The day they left for their trip was a masterclass in deception. I helped Qley pack her bag, told her to have a wonderful time, and kissed her goodbye. She and Jessica were giddy with excitement, talking about all the stores they were going to hit. "Don't have too much boring fun without me," Qley said as she walked out the door. "I won't," I replied, and I meant it. The moment her car was out of the driveway, I switched into execution mode. I started with my office. I packed my documents, my hard drives, and my personal effects into labeled boxes. I dismantled my desk and chair. By the time I went to sleep on Friday night, my entire professional life was containerized, and the office looked like a sparse, unused guest room. I slept on the couch. Saturday morning, the movers arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. They were incredible. I walked them through the apartment, pointing out every item on my digital inventory. My clothes, my toiletries, my books, the television in the living room which was mine, the couch they were sitting on which was mine, the high-end coffee machine she used every day for her social media posts. The crew worked with silent, professional efficiency. They wrapped my furniture, packed my belongings, and loaded everything onto the truck. While they worked, I did a deep clean of the areas I was vacating. I wiped down the empty shelves in the closet, cleaned the bathroom sink, and scrubbed the space where my desk used to be. I wanted to leave a void, not a mess. The last thing to go was the mattress from our bed. It was mine, purchased before I even met her. I left her the bed frame, which was hers, and the box spring. A bare box spring in an empty room has a certain stark, poetic quality. By 3 in the afternoon, they were done. The truck was loaded and the apartment felt unnervingly large and empty. I did one final walkthrough with my app, checking off every item. Perfect execution. I tipped the crew generously and they drove off toward my new life. I was left standing in what was now, unequivocally, Qley's apartment. Her pink, fluffy decorations and inspirational quote wall art now looked lonely and absurd. The final step was to sever the connection. I sat down on the floor, pulled out my laptop, and logged into my bank account. I located the automated monthly rent payment and canceled it. Then I composed a carefully worded email to the landlord, a man I had spoken to only once when I first moved in. The email was polite and formal. I stated that as of this date, I had permanently vacated the premises at her address. I reminded him that I was never a signatory on the lease agreement, and that all future communications and financial responsibilities regarding the property should be directed to the sole leaseholder, Qley. I attached a digital copy of the original agreement, showing her as the only tenant. I hit send. Then I opened my phone. I blocked Qley's number. I blocked Jessica's number. I went on every social media platform and blocked Qley, Jessica, and their entire circle of friends. I created a digital fortress. I wanted absolute silence. I wanted the consequences to arrive for her from a world that I was no longer a part of. I took one last look around the apartment, at the ghost of a life I had invested in. I felt no sadness, no anger. I just felt the quiet satisfaction of a complex problem solved. I walked out, leaving my key on the kitchen counter and closed the door behind me. Update 2. The first week in my new condo was peaceful. Unpacking and setting up my own space, exactly how I wanted it, was therapeutic. My systems were back online. My computer, my coffee machine, my life. Everything was efficient, logical, and blissfully free of drama. The silence from Qley and her crew was absolute, just as I had designed. The first tremor of the earthquake I had triggered arrived the following Monday, a little over a week after my departure. It wasn't from Qley, but from a mutual acquaintance, a guy named Ben, who was more my friend than hers. He sent me a text. "Hey man, is everything okay with you and Qley? She's been trying to reach you and is kind of freaking out." I replied with a simple, "We're no longer together. I've moved on." Ben's response came back instantly. Okay. Wow. She's telling people you just ghosted her and that you owe her rent money. I almost laughed. The narrative was already being spun. I was the villain who had abandoned the poor, struggling influencer. I just texted back, not my problem anymore, man. Take care. I knew the real storm wouldn't hit until the first of the month, which was still a week away. The first of the month came and went. I paid the rent for my new condo. On the second of the month, I got a frantic call from Ben. He said Jessica had called him, screaming, because Qley's landlord had just called her, furious that the rent hadn't been paid. Qley had apparently been ignoring his calls, thinking it was a mistake. This was the call I had been waiting for. Not to me, but to her. The system was working. Qley, unable to reach me, had apparently descended into full-blown panic. She didn't have $1,500. Her income from her social media posts was sporadic and small, barely enough to cover her weekend brunches, let alone a month's rent in a city like this. That's when the real offensive began. Jessica, being the loyal but useless best friend, took it upon herself to be Qley's attack dog. She created a new social media account and sent me a long, rambling message. It was a work of art, full of accusations and insults. She called me a coward, a user, a monster. She claimed I had tricked Qley into depending on me and then pulled the rug out from under her. The most ridiculous part was her claim that I had stolen things from the apartment. She said Qley's favorite coffee machine was missing. It was my coffee machine. I had the receipt. I took a screenshot of the message and sent it to my lawyer with a note. For the file. Then I blocked the new account. The next day, Qley's mom called me. I almost didn't answer, but my curiosity got the better of me. She was surprisingly calm, which was almost more unnerving. She explained that Qley was very upset and that there had clearly been a misunderstanding. She said Qley was willing to forgive me for my immature behavior if I would just call her and transfer her the rent money. I was polite. I was firm. With all due respect, I said, Qley and I are no longer in a relationship. I have moved out of her apartment. The lease is in her name, and the financial responsibility is hers. I am not legally or morally obligated to pay her rent. But she can't afford it, her mother exclaimed, her voice finally cracking. She'll be evicted. Where will she go? That is a problem for Qley to solve, I replied calmly. I supported her for a full year, giving her an opportunity to build her career. She chose to disrespect and devalue that support. The terms of our arrangement are over. I wished her a good day and hung up before she could respond. The landlord, a stern, no-nonsense older man, apparently gave Qley a 5-day notice to pay rent or face eviction proceedings. This information came again via Ben, who was now my unwilling source of intel. Qley was a wreck. She had apparently tried to launch a GoFundMe, claiming her toxic ex had left her destitute. It raised about $50, mostly from her aunt. Jessica posted a long, tearful story about Qley's plight, which got a lot of sympathetic comments but no actual financial help. Their online friends were happy to offer emojis of praying hands, but not a single dollar. The best part, according to Ben, was the implosion of her friendship with Jessica. Qley had apparently expected to move in with Jessica. But Jessica lived in a tiny studio apartment and had no interest in housing her broke, unemployed friend. Their friendship, it turned out, was built on the foundation of brunch and shopping trips. Without my money to fund that lifestyle, their bond disintegrated. They had a massive fight, and Qley was now well and truly on her own. The support system she thought she had was just a collection of users, same as her. Final update: it has been 2 months since I moved out. The final act of this drama played out exactly as the logic dictated it would. Qley was unable to pay the rent. She couldn't find a new roommate on such short notice, and even if she had, she couldn't cover the deposit and first month's rent for them. The eviction process went forward. About 3 weeks ago, Ben told me that he saw Qley and her parents moving her things out of the apartment. There was no moving truck, just her dad's pickup. She was crying, and her parents looked furious. The influencer lifestyle, packed into cardboard boxes and loaded into the back of a 10-year-old truck. Her social media presence has collapsed. She tried to pivot her brand to be about overcoming hardship, but it came across as whiny and entitled. Her followers, who were there for the pictures of fancy cocktails and new outfits, quickly lost interest. Her comment sections, once full of praise, are now mostly empty. She had nothing to offer people except a lifestyle that was never really hers in the first place. Jessica and the rest of the friend group have completely abandoned her. Their social media is now full of pictures of them at the same old brunch spots, just with Qley conspicuously absent. Their loyalty was to the lifestyle, not to the person. I did get one final indirect message from her. Her mother sent me a long email last week. It was a bizarre mix of pleading and accusation. She claimed I had destroyed her daughter's confidence and ruined her career prospects. She said Qley was now living back at home in her childhood bedroom, was deeply depressed, and it was all my fault. The email ended with a demand that I pay them a lump sum of $10,000 for emotional distress and relocation expenses. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. He sent back a one-sentence reply on my behalf. We categorically reject your baseless demands and will consider any further contact to be harassment. That was the end of that. The true satisfaction for me wasn't in her failure, but in the clean, logical success of my own plan. I didn't yell, I didn't argue, I didn't engage in drama. I identified a failed system, planned a solution, and executed it flawlessly. I took what was mine and removed myself from the equation. Her downfall was not my doing, it was the result of her own choices finally catching up with her once the safety net was gone. Oh, and there was one last little detail, one final piece of data I left for her. Before I left the apartment that last day, I went to the fridge. Pinned to it with a novelty magnet she loved was a printout. It was a detailed summary from my banking app showing the $1,500 rent payment I had made to her landlord every month for the past 12 months. At the top, I had written a simple note with a black marker. It just said, "My half." At a wedding we attended, my wife danced with her male best friend all night while ignoring me. When someone asked if she was married, she said, "Not really. It doesn't count when he's boring." They laughed. I just watched. The next morning, she woke up alone. So my marriage ended last Saturday night. There was no big fight, no yelling, no plates being thrown. It ended with a laugh. Her laugh. A fake, nasty little sound in a fancy hotel ballroom that told me everything I needed to know. Let's back up. I'm Tom. My wife, well, ex-wife now I guess, is Olivia. We were married for 4 years. On the surface, things probably looked fine. Good house, nice cars, the whole deal. But underneath, the foundation was shot. I've known it for about a year. I'm a pretty observant guy. I notice things. And what I noticed was Ben. Ben is her male best friend, her brother. For the first few years, I tried to be the cool, trusting husband. I told myself that their history was just that, history. But in the last year, after we got married, something changed in her. The sense of entitlement grew, and her respect for me seemed to shrink in direct proportion. The red flags went from small, fluttering things in the distance to giant, flapping banners right in my face. It was the constant texting. The phone angled away from me whenever he messaged. It was the way she'd bring him up in every conversation, comparing my choices to what Ben would have done. The moment I knew I had to start planning my exit was about 8 months ago. We were planning a trip for our anniversary. I had spent weeks researching a quiet cabin in the mountains, the kind of peaceful getaway I knew we both used to love. When I showed her the pictures, she seemed underwhelmed. The next day, she came to me with a new plan. Ben was saying we should go to that new resort on the coast instead. It's supposed to be amazing. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a decision she had already made with him. My plans were irrelevant. We went to the resort. I spent 4 days watching her text him pictures of the view. That's when I realized I wasn't being a cool husband. I was being a placeholder, a provider, the boring, reliable infrastructure for the exciting life she was living with other people. So I stopped being a doormat. I just did it quietly. I'm not the type to make big, dramatic scenes. That's her arena. I'm a planner. I started making preparations. The first call was to a lawyer, a sharp guy my friend recommended. I had a 90-minute consultation just to understand my rights and liabilities. The house was in my name, bought and paid for before I met her. That was the most important thing. He advised me on how to protect my other assets. The next day, I started moving my money. I opened a new set of bank accounts at a different bank. I began diverting most of my income there. leaving just enough in our shared accounts to keep up appearances. I was building an escape route, brick by brick. I knew I was going to need it. I just didn't know when. The wedding last Saturday was the final straw. It was for her friend from college. A huge, expensive party. Olivia was in heaven. She loves a crowd, an audience. She had bought a new dress for the occasion, one that she casually mentioned was a bit pricey, and put on our joint card. She spent the entire night attached to Ben's arm, laughing loudly, making a spectacle of themselves on the dance floor. She basically ignored me, and I let her. I wasn't there to fight for her attention. I was there to observe, to gather the final pieces of data I needed. I had a feeling the night was going to be important. Around 10, I was standing near the bar, talking to the groom's uncle. She was with Ben and a few other people I didn't know. I saw some woman point at Olivia's wedding ring and ask if she and Ben were married. Instead of just saying no and pointing to her actual husband standing 20 feet away, Olivia put on a show. She laughed this high, fake laugh and said, "Oh, I'm married, but not to Ben, unfortunately." Then she leaned in, all conspiratorial, and said, "Not really anyway. It doesn't count when he's boring." The group laughed. A polite but definitely condescending laugh. And that was it. No anger, no big explosion in my chest. Just a quiet, cold feeling of absolute certainty. It was the confirmation I had been waiting for. This wasn't a marriage, it was a joke, and I was the punchline. I didn't say a word. I just gave her a little nod from across the room. A nod that she probably interpreted as me being attentive. But it wasn't. It was a nod of acknowledgement. A final message received. I turned around, walked out of that ballroom without looking back, and went up to our hotel room. The party was over. My marriage was over. It was time to execute the plan. Update 1. The first thing I did in that hotel room was take off my wedding ring. I set it on the dresser and just looked at it for a minute. It felt like taking off a costume. Then I packed my bag. Every movement was calm, deliberate. I wasn't acting on emotion. I was following a procedure I had been mentally rehearsing for months. I was a man executing a plan, nothing more. I checked out of the hotel, got my car, and drove home. No music, just silence. The 40-minute drive was the most peaceful I had felt in a long time. The mental weight of pretending, of swallowing the constant low-grade disrespect, was finally gone. I got to the house around 11:30. My house. The first thing on my checklist was to secure the property. I walked straight to the smart home control panel in the kitchen. I went into the user settings and found her profile. 2 clicks. Deleted. Her access code was gone. Her key fob was deactivated. I went to the garage and manually changed the entry code. In the space of about 5 minutes, she was a stranger to my home, physically locked out. Next, I cut off the money. I sat down at my desk and logged into our joint bank account. It was the account I kept funded for her monthly spending, her car payment, her shopping, her lunches with friends. The balance was a few $1,000s. I transferred every penny to my personal account. Then I logged into my main credit card account. She had a supplementary card that she used as her own personal expense account. I went through the recent charges, the dress for the wedding, a spa day with Ben's sister, a new set of luggage for a girls' trip she was planning. I reported her card as stolen. The account was frozen instantly. The financial support system was gone. Then came the hard part. Her stuff. All of it. I had a huge stack of new flat-packed moving boxes in the garage that I'd bought for this exact purpose. I spent the next 3 hours systematically erasing her from my home. I wasn't angry or sad. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was an estate manager clearing out the belongings of a person who had moved on. I cleared out her massive walk-in closet, her side of the bathroom vanity, her home office space. Every piece of clothing, every shoe, every bottle of expensive junk. I was systematic. I sealed each box with tape and stacked it neatly in the garage. The house started to feel like mine again. It was quiet. It was orderly. At 3 a.m., I sent a 2-word email to my lawyer. File it. Then I went to bed and slept soundly for the first time in a year. The calls started the next morning. First, a cheerful, oblivious one from the hotel. She thought I'd left for work. An hour later, an angry, confused one. Her card was declined when she tried to pay for her and Ben's room service breakfast. An hour after that, pure panic. She was on the front porch and her key wasn't working. I decided to answer that one. "Tom, what is going on? I'm locked out," she screamed. "I know," I said. "What do you mean, you know? This isn't funny. Let me in." "No," I said, my voice completely flat. "I heard what you said last night, Olivia. I heard you tell everyone your marriage doesn't count because I'm boring. So consider this me making your life a little more exciting. You're free now. You don't have a boring husband anymore, and you don't have his boring house either." She started denying it, of course. It was a joke. I was being crazy. I had misunderstood. "It doesn't matter," I said. "It's done. All your things are in 42 boxes in the garage. A moving company is coming tomorrow to take them to a storage unit. I paid for 3 months. I'll text you the info when it's done. The bank account is empty. The credit card is canceled. The divorce papers will be served on Monday. We're finished." I could hear Ben in the background, telling her I was bluffing, telling her I was just being dramatic. He had driven her home, her knight in shining armor. "You can't do this," she cried. "I already did," I said. "Have a nice life." I hung up and blocked both their numbers. Phase 1 was complete. Update 2. Of course, they didn't just accept it. People like Olivia and Ben never face consequences quietly. They have to create a narrative where they are the victims. For a few hours, they just lingered. My security camera caught them trying the doors, Ben posturing and trying to look tough for the camera. It was pathetic. He even tried to shoulder check the front door once before apparently realizing it was solid wood and he wasn't in a movie. The next day, when the movers came, they sat across the street in Ben's car and watched the whole thing. I made a point of going out to get the mail, then spent about 20 minutes weeding my front garden bed, just ignoring them completely. My total lack of reaction seemed to infuriate them more than anything else. I could feel their eyes on me, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of a confrontation. With the direct approach failing, they pivoted to a campaign of information warfare. This was Olivia's area of expertise. Within a day, the whispers started. I was the villain, the jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle her having a male friend. The story they concocted was that I'd had a breakdown at the wedding, imagined things, and flew into a violent rage, kicking her out of her home. It was a well-crafted story, and some people bought it. The first direct hit came from Olivia's mother. She left me a long, tearful voicemail about how disappointed she was in me, how Olivia was a wreck, and how I needed to be a man and fix the mess I had made. I saved the voicemail but didn't reply. Then I got texts from some of Olivia's aunts, angry, accusatory messages. I was a monster. I was abusive. They were going to make sure everyone knew the truth. They were trying to isolate me. They didn't realize I had already isolated them. I knew I needed proof. Hard proof. A wedding is a public event, and in 2025, everything is filmed. I didn't want to deal with the official videographer. I thought about who would have the most footage. The bride's younger cousin, a girl named Maya. She had been glued to her phone all night, filming everything for her Instagram. I found her online and sent her a message. I told her I was putting together a little memory book for the bride and groom and that I'd love to get her clips from the reception. She was happy to help. She sent me a link to a folder with all her videos. I spent an hour going through them, and then I found it. A video of some people on the dance floor. But in the background, perfectly framed and perfectly audible, was the conversation at the bar. The woman asking the question. Olivia's high-pitched, fake laugh. And her voice crystal clear, saying, "Not really anyway. It doesn't count when he's boring." It was my silver bullet. I clipped the video. Just that 10-second piece. I wasn't going to post it for the world to see. That wasn't the plan. The plan was surgical. I sent a group text. The recipients were a very specific list of people. The bride and groom, Olivia's parents, her sister, and Ben's long-term girlfriend, Emily. I had her number from a dinner party. The text was short. "I know you've all been hearing a lot of stories. I just want the truth to be clear. This is a clip from the wedding on Saturday. The audio is what's important. This is why my marriage is over." I attached the video and hit send. Then I put my phone on silent and went for a long walk. Final update. It's been 6 months. The divorce is final. My lawyer said it was one of the quickest he'd ever seen. A video of your wife publicly renouncing your marriage tends to remove all her bargaining power. The video didn't just end my marriage, it ended their whole world. The bride and groom were furious with Olivia for creating such a toxic drama at their wedding and cut her off completely. They even sent me a separate apology, which was a classy move. Her parents were the real tea. They are obsessed with their public image, and the video of their daughter behaving so crassly was the ultimate humiliation. The story I heard was that they confronted her with the video, and when she couldn't deny it, they completely withdrew their support, both emotional and financial. The lawyer she had hired on their dime was promptly fired. She was told to get a job and stand on her own 2 feet for the first time in her life. Ben got the worst of it. His girlfriend, Emily, was a firestorm. She didn't just dump him, she went public. She posted the video clip on her own social media, tagging both of them. She wrote a long post about the years of lies and disrespect. She torched them. The story went viral in our social circle. Their smear campaign against me was instantly forgotten, replaced by a public shaming of them. I also heard from a friend that Emily's father, who's a prominent local businessman, made a few calls. Ben's sales career, which relied heavily on reputation and networking, is now in shambles. Olivia's life, from what I've pieced together, has completely imploded. She has no money, her parents are barely speaking to her, and her friends have scattered. Ben, now a social outcast, wants nothing to do with her. She had to get a job as a waitress to support herself. She's living in a small apartment with 3 roommates. The exciting life she thought she was entitled to is gone. I sold the house. I wanted a fresh start. I bought a smaller place, a condo downtown with a great view. It's my space. It's quiet. The best revenge wasn't kicking her out. It was simply showing people the truth. She and Ben built their entire relationship on a foundation of lies and disrespect. All I did was hold up a mirror. They couldn't stand the reflection. She called me boring. Maybe I am. But my life is stable. It's honest. It's peaceful. Her life, the one she chose, is a chaotic mess. She woke up alone in that hotel room, but the truth is, she'd been alone in our marriage for a long time. I just finally made it official.